It's always interesting to me to Google the topic of the sermon. So when I put temptation in the search bar, one of the first things that popped up was temptation, 50% off. Okay, I admit to being intrigued, and I was welcomed to the temptation coupon page where I can pay less and save more. Tempting proposition for sure. You know, some folks give things up for Lent, and in the spirit of solidarity with any of you who are giving up your favorite foods for Lent, here's a little inspirational story. It's about a man named Sam who decided he was going on a diet. And to make sure that he would succeed, he announced his plan to all of his friends and coworkers. Sam was one of those people like Oscar Wilde who remarked, "I can resist anything except temptation." Well, Sam's coworkers were pretty good about giving him moral support until the morning he walked into the office carrying a box of freshly baked donuts. "What's with the donuts, Sam?" one of them asked. "I thought you were on a diet." "Well, I am," said Sam, "but I want you to know I wouldn't have gotten those donuts if it hadn't been for God." Well, that remark begged an explanation, and Sam quickly supplied one. "You see, I was driving into work and I knew I'd have to go right past the bakery. I just couldn't get those donuts out of my mind, so I decided I'd pray to God for help. God, I said, if you want me to have a box of those hot, delicious donuts, give me a parking place right in front of the bakery." And sure enough, I found one on my 8th trip around the block. Now, let's read probably the most well-known temptation story of all from the Gospel according to Matthew. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. He fasted 40 days and 40 nights, and afterwards he was famished. The tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." But he answered, "It is written, one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." Well, then the devil took him to the holy city, placed him on the pinnacle of the temple, saying to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down. For it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not dash your foot against a stone." Jesus said to him, "Again, it is written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." Again, the devil took him to the very high mountain, showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory, and he said to him, "All these I will give you if you will fall down and worship me." Then Jesus said to him, "Away with you, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve only him." Then the devil left him, and suddenly angels came and waited upon him. Now, most of us think if there's one thing we know about in life, it's temptation. I mean, we face temptation all the time. Temptation hangs in our environment, a lot like the coronavirus, always threatening to break down our resistance. We're tempted to break our diets, flirt with someone at work, finesse the chemistry test, cheat on our taxes, gossip about a friend, lie our way out of trouble, you name it. We're always being tempted to do what we know we shouldn't do. So we don't need any instruction about temptation. Temptation we know about. But do we really? Do we really know what temptation is? Well, today's lesson about the Gospel of Matthew is a story, I think, about the nature of temptation, of human temptation, Jesus' temptation and ours, and it throws a surprising light on what temptation might really be. So what does it mean, really, to be tempted? Many of us remember one of the books on the bestseller list, the cleverly titled, "All I Really Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten." In that book, author Robert Fulghum says the deepest wisdom that he knows about life was learned not at the top of the graduate school mountain, but in the kindergarten classroom and in the sandbox playing with other children. Well, if Robert Fulghum got his deepest wisdom about ordinary life in kindergarten, Perhaps the best place to search for wisdom about the life of faith, about a theological concept like temptation, is from Sunday school. Maybe all we really need to know about temptation we learned in Sunday school. So, we hear about one Sunday school teacher who said one Sunday, the best measure of a person is what you would do if you knew no one would ever find out. That teacher was saying that when you take away all the desire for reward and all the fear of punishment, no one will ever find out, what you do in life grows out of who you understand yourself to be. That Sunday school teacher was moving toward a profound gospel insight. Christian ethics grows out of Christian identity, and the decisions that we make in life are a product of who we understand ourselves to be. So in that light, perhaps, we have too shallow a view of temptation. So in ordinary terms, we think of temptation as the urge to do something that we would really like to do, but know we shouldn't. So one more cigarette, one more fling, one more donut, one more drink, one more juicy rumor. But the deepest temptation is not the urge to misbehave, to do what we know we shouldn't do, but rather the enticement to compromise our baptismal identity, to be who we are not called to be. And that's the message in this story of Jesus' temptation. Jesus isn't being tempted to misbehave, to steal a wallet or cheat on his taxes or pick a fight with his neighbor. It's deeper than that. Jesus is being tempted to ignore his baptism, to deny who he is, to forget that he is the child of his Father in heaven. So it's significant that Jesus comes to the temptation immediately from his baptism, when the skies open and a voice from heaven tells him, "You are my beloved Son, the one in whom I am well pleased." That's who he is. You are the heir to the identity and mission of my people. You are my prophet, my priest, my anointed, my suffering servant. You are the one I am sending down the long and painful road to Jerusalem. You are the one I am calling to drink the bitter cup of sacrifice. You are the one I'm delivering into the hands of those who will kill you. You are the one I am sending to bear the cross for the salvation of all people. You are the one to whom I am entrusting the promise of redemption. You are the one. You are my beloved Son, and I am well pleased with you. So it is then, when Jesus' vocation and identity are most clear, that he comes to his season of tempting. It's precisely Jesus' identity that the tempter of the story seeks to destroy. So that, after all, is what temptation is all about. Notice how the tempter begins. If you are the Son of God. He could have attacked directly. You're not the Son of God. But he was too crafty for that. Much better to generate self-doubt. If you are the Son of God. Since self-doubt is the cancer that eats away at identity. So he picks away at Jesus' sonship, at his baptismal identity. And the three temptations, to turn stones into bread, to throw himself down from the top of the temple, and to worship the tempter, they aren't enticements to do bad things. They are, at root, invitations to be somebody else, to live some life other than that of beloved Son of God. The tempter wants him to change the script, to trade God's story for some other story. And notice that Jesus combats the attack not with theological innovation, skillful counter-arguments, or clever repartee, but by citing the story, quoting each time scriptures from Deuteronomy that he was taught as a child, as it were, taught in Sunday school. And he will not change the script. He will not live a narrative other than the one he has been given. He remembers his baptism, and he knows who he is. And because we belong to Jesus Christ, we too have been given a part in the story, a role to play in this holy drama of redemption. We have been called in our baptism to be God's beloved children. And in a world where might makes right, we've been named ambassadors of reconciliation. And it's our baptismal identity to be those who sow love where there is hatred, hope where there is despair, and faith where there is doubt. And because we are called, we are also tempted to change the script, tempted to live out another story, tempted to be someone other than who we are called to be. To yield to temptation, you see, is far more serious than to commit some transgression. To yield to temptation is to say, I am not a child of God, and I will not take my part in God's drama of redemption. In the midst of South Africa's struggle against apartheid, one of the most respected voices for racial harmony and human dignity was that of Bishop Desmond Tutu. But even the closest colleagues of Tutu were sometimes distressed by the bishop's tolerance and moderation. They wished he would be more aggressive with his opponents. One of them said, at his age, you'd think he would have learned to hate a little more. But there's this problem with Tutu. He believes literally in the gospel. And what he was saying is that Tutu knew who he was, remembered his baptism. He knew the gospel story, and he refused to change the script. And like Jesus, like Desmond Tutu, we who are part of the church have been baptized, and the words have been said about us. You are a son, a daughter of God. In you, I am well pleased. So we too have been given our parts to play in the drama of God's redemption. You are on a journey. And that's how we describe the season of Lent, this journey to the cross that's laden with struggle, with a wrestling match with the greatest foe you have, yourself. Do you remember that Staples commercial with the big red button? What a successful ad. I don't know what they paid the agency that created it, but that red button is still alive. It entered our cultural lexicon. And in the ad, whenever an individual confronts a difficult situation, all he or she had to do is reach over, push a red, oversized, glowing button that read easy, and out came the words, "That was easy." Well, someone gave me one of those buttons a while ago, and it sits in my office on my desk. And friends, I have to tell you, it doesn't work. Because unfortunately, there are no easy buttons. There are no easy buttons to free us from the trials and tests of life. When Jesus taught us to pray, it was not save us from temptation, but lead us not into temptation. Because being in a tempting situation is not easy. And given enough exposures to temptation, every single one of us will fall. And if we're honest with ourselves, we'll admit we fall down a lot. That's kind of our story. In fact, we start out that way. If all of us could remember those days when we were learning to walk, most of us can't, but we remember seeing other little ones learning. Falling down just seems to be the way of it. Sometimes there are tears, sometimes frustration, sometimes the ground just seems a safer place and the attempt is put off until another day. We fall down, and any journey, like walking, that gets us anywhere important is going to include a few stumbles, a stubbed toe, a cracked shin, a bloody nose, a teary moment, an unplanned detour, a lack of resources, a mechanical failure. Well, we all fall down over and over. And we realize that our journey is not just these 40 days in Lent, but the whole of our lives. And every day we're given opportunities to claim the gift of life that we've been given in Christ. And every day we fall down. So instead of journeying to the death of self and of sin, We wrestle with the adversary inside of us, our own willfulness, and we fall down. So it's really easy to think then of Lent as all about falling down, about collapsing in tears and remorse and regret and the overwhelming sense of sinfulness. And there's plenty of opportunity for us to do just that. That's the way we move forward, we seem to think. But maybe this Lent, like the one we follow, Jesus, our Lenten opportunity is not to fall down for once. We stand in the arms of the one who stood for us. So perhaps Lent is really all about standing and stepping, acknowledging who and whose we are. And even as we're being exhorted during Lent to deepen our commitments to faithful living, which is a wonderful thing, Lent also calls us not to focus on what we're doing, but to focus on Jesus. It's a long and sometimes painful journey, but one well worth taking. Because Jesus says, walk with me. And when you stumble, when you fall, focus on me, and we'll get there together. Amen.